Tribute to Greatness, Alfred and Emma Blaser, by Roy H. and Goldie B. Maughan. Goldie and I have prepared this tribute to her parents out of our love and respect and admiration for them and their descendants. We hope it will bring back fond memories and help us all to appreciate these great people. We'd like to express our appreciation to all of you who have furnished photographs and historical material. So many have helped that we hesitate to name anyone, but Leroy Blaser deserves special thanks for his early family photos. On June 12, 1958, Alfred and Emma Blaser celebrated their golden wedding anniversary. 40 members of their family were present with a show of love and affection to warm the heart. Their 5 sons and 1 daughter were all present with their families. The day began with a session in the Logan Temple for all the adult children and grandchildren. Here they are outside the temple following the family temple session. Grandpa had been proxy for more than 1,000 endowments by the time of the golden wedding. We all then went to Xanadu Lodge in Logan Canyon, where we had a beautiful dinner and program. Look at the surprised expression as they saw the beautiful 3-tiered wedding cake from Goldie and Roy. We all had a delicious dinner followed by a piece of the wedding cake. After the cake, we had a marvelous program where everyone sang or spoke of their love for Grandma and Grandpa. Pictures were taken of each family with Grandma and Grandpa. Here are Leroy, Rachel, and their family. Edward, Bernice, and their family. Goldie, Roy, and their family. Albert, Ruth, and their family. Glenn, Ruth, and their family. Harold, Doris, and their family. What could be the reason for the marvelous success of Alfred and Emma Blaser? Judged by an eternal measure, you could search the world over without finding greater success in life. Let's go back to their beginnings to see if we can find the secrets of their success. Both Alfred and Emma Blaser were born in Canton Bern, Switzerland, in another century. Grandpa was born in Langnau on March 14, 1879, more than 100 years ago.
I am the youngest child of Annie Marie Gerber and Christian Blaser. I was born in Langnau, Bern, Switzerland on March 14, 1879, and at 5 p.m.
And Grandma was born a few kilometers away in Ostermundigen on July 21, 1886. She was 7 years younger than he was. The family pronounced their name Blaser in Switzerland and in Montpelier. On the living room wall in the family home in Montpelier, Idaho, hung a large portrait of Alfred's parents, Christian Blaser and Anna Marie Gerber Blaser. He was covered by a large oval glass about 15 by 20 inches. That reflection of the living room window is when I photographed it in 1940. This beautiful small portrait is the original from which the large wall picture was copied. It was taken in Langnau, Bern, Switzerland by Friedrich Jaegi of Langnau, probably in the 1880s. The reverse side shows that Jaegi's studio was on Bahnhofstrasse, translated Railroad Depot Street, in Langnau. This is Alfred's report card for his 8 years of elementary school from 1886 to 1894. It shows that he attended school in Langnau for all his formal schooling. While he was in the 7th and 8th grades, he worked in a cement block factory. He was a small boy and had to lift and load sacks of cement that weighed more than he did. The house where Alfred and his parents lived was built in 1487, 5 years before Columbus sailed for America. Alfred was the last of 7 children. This photo was taken by Alfred in 1939.
We lived about 20 minutes from the city of Langnau in Bern, Switzerland. Our house is built on a side hill, and the hill, on the top of the hill, used to be a castle. And of course, the castle was abolished maybe 152 years before we moved into that house. And above the house, there was 3 or 4 apple trees. One apple tree made several bushes, apples each year. And above our land was a hedge, a hazelnut hedge. And every year we hunted nuts there and filled our pockets with.
Alfred was raised in the Lutheran state religion. This is his confirmation certificate dated March 23, 1894, the year of his graduation from school. About 1893, the Gottlieb Hubschmidt family rented the Blasers a basement apartment, asking first if they would rent to Mormons. Alfred's mother said she didn't care because all religions were the same. This is a 1968 photograph by Roy Mon. The Hubschmidt apartment was on the left. The Hubschmidts introduced Anna Maria to the gospel. She accepted it with all her heart and was baptized in January 1894 at the age of 53. We believe she was the first of her family to join. Alfred's mother was a faithful member, but Alfred resisted and ridiculed the church, mainly because of the lies his Lutheran minister schoolteacher told about the Mormons. Alfred's father, Christian Blaser, joined the church on June 18, 1898, and less than 2 months later, Christian died on August 6, 1898. When Alfred was 15 years old, the Mormons were holding a meeting in this apartment on a warm August evening.
The evening in the month of August, and it is very warm. They had the door wide open, and I could see the table there, and the white dishcloth, and I could see the sacrament, 2 cups, and a part of a loaf of bread. And I walked by, and 10, 15 steps, and then on the way back, I put the firecracker in my cigar, and that started to burn right then, and I threw it into the open window. That gave a terrible explosion, more than I ever thought and expected in all my life. And the firecracker exploded 3 times. It was counterbound, and it exploded 3 times, and every time it exploded, it jumped. And I never forget the holler and what I heard there. And I was sorry. From the bottom of my heart, I was sorry that I done it. And as soon as I thrown the firecracker and heard the explosion, I was petrified, paralyzed. Or looked like a certain power held me there that I couldn't run. I didn't even try to run. And I was standing in that position just like the firecracker left my hand. That's the way I looked at it. I looked at my hand, and I couldn't take it back. Till everyone in the audience down there came around the table and looked out and see me there, and then I could go. Pretty soon, Mother came up. She said, "Alfred, have you done that, throw the firecracker?" I said, "Yes." "I'm sorry for him, Mama." She said, you know what the missionary said?" I said, "No." She said, "A missionary that talked when the firecracker came in, said that boy will someday accept the gospel and emigrate to Utah and accomplish much good about the youth of Zion and become an honorable man. And of course she meant what she said.
This shows Anna Maria Gerber Blaser in the center of the picture with some other members of the Langnau branch. And this is the Langnau branch and Alfred's mother near the left center. About a year after this picture was taken, Alfred became seriously ill with double pneumonia. He had been unconscious for 3 days, and the doctor had given him up to die. His mother called the elders, and at the end of the administration, he sat up and said, "Amen." He was baptized February 14, 1899, a month before his 20th birthday. 3 months after he was baptized, Alfred and his mother left for America. A local newspaper published a story about how a prominent family had been deceived by the Mormons and were leaving for America. Too bad we didn't ask the story of this beautiful embroidered silk farewell card. Can we guess that they received it when they left for America? They left from the Langnau Railroad Station on May 14, 1899 at 6 a.m. All the local saints were there to see them off, but not a single one of their non-member friends came to tell them goodbye. That's Rex, Allen, and Roy Mon in this 1968 photograph. They sailed from Liverpool on the steamship City of Rome, one of the largest ships then afloat. The City of Rome was 560 feet long, 52 feet wide, and had a top speed of 18 knots. The Atlantic crossing took 8 days. While waiting a day in the New York City hotel, they sent a telegram to Alfred's brother Ernest in Chicago. When the train stopped in Chicago at 8 o'clock the next evening, Ernest was there to meet them. He was dressed in a Prince Albert suit and a high hat. After the train left, Ernest went back to his lodgings, sold everything he couldn't take with him, and followed them west after a few days. They reached Montpelier at 10 p.m. June 6, 1899. Alfred's sister Lena, who had been in America 2 years, met them at the station and took them home. The next morning, when they awoke, they saw 6 inches of snow on the ground. This is an 1890 newspaper picture of Montpelier. Alfred thought of the flowers and the green pastures they had left behind in the beautiful Swiss countryside and said that he was going back to Switzerland the first $100 he could earn. They purchased this 3-room log cabin with a dirt roof, a fenced lot, a small barn, and a chicken coop for $250. They paid nothing down and used the $84 they had left to buy furniture. During the summer of 1901, Alfred worked for his brother Bob as a mason in Rexburg, Idaho, and paid $150 towards the home. The next year he paid off the remainder of the purchase price of the home, and it was clear of debt when his mother died on October 18, 1902. She was buried in the Montpelier Cemetery. Let's find out about the early life of Emma Trussell Blaser and how she came to meet Grandpa. Emma Trussell was born in the tiny village of Ostermundigen, Bern Canton, Switzerland, on July 21, 1886. She was the 5th of 7 children. Her father, Friedrich Trussell, was a butcher who served an apprenticeship to learn his trade. The family lived in this beautiful little town of Bolligen. While Friedrich was working at his trade as a butcher here in Bolligen, he heard and accepted the restored gospel and was baptized when he was not quite 30 years old. They carefully saved their money to gather with the saints and immigrated to Montpelier, Idaho in the spring of 1890 when Emma was not quite 4 years old. He took a job as a butcher for $5 per week plus lard and meat for his family. This is a newspaper picture of Montpelier in 1890, the year the family arrived. When Emma was 8 years old, her father was called by the prophet to go on a mission to his native Switzerland. Before he could leave, his wife died, leaving 3 motherless children, so his mission call was postponed. This is Emma's mother, Maria Mayer Berger Trussell. This is the family after the mother's death: Friedrich, Fritz, Grandma Margarita Berger Mayer, Emma, and Gertie seated. In 1899, Emma's father was again ready to go on his mission when his son Fritz, young Friedrich, was drowned while swimming in Bear River. This memorial for Fritz shows that he was 14 years, 5 months, and 9 days old at the time of his death. Alfred lived near the Trussells, so that Trussells would pass his home on the way to town. One day, as Emma's younger sister Gertie was passing by, Alfred's pet rooster came out and picked Gertie's leg hard enough to make it bleed. Gertie complained to Emma, so when Emma went by, she had a piece of board in her hand. The rooster came after Emma, and she hit it on the head with the board, and the rooster dropped dead. What a way to get a boy's attention. Emma was probably 14 years old at that time.
When I seen Emma come and pick up a board and hit the rooster, that's about the first time I seen that girl, and I had no idea she's going to be my life's companion.
In 1901, Friedrich Trussell again prepared to go on his twice-postponed mission. After the missionary farewell, his 8-year-old daughter Gertie dropped a lighted lantern, which broke and covered her with burning kerosene. The doctor was called, but he left saying that there was no hope for her, that she would die before morning. Gertrude was administered to by the elders, and her life was spared, although she carried scars throughout her life. This shows her as a mature young woman, the only picture we have of her after the accident. This is Gertie's autoharp, a musical instrument which plays chords at the press of a button. She cheerfully overcame her disfigurement, learned to walk again, write poetry, sing, and play the autoharp for the family to sing together. This picture of Goldie Mawn holding the autoharp gives an idea of its size. A traveling photographic studio in a railroad parlor car came to Montpelier in about 1902 when Emma was 16 years old, and she and her grandmother, Margarita Berger Mayer, had this picture taken. Grandma was 74 years old. This is the Trussell home. Emma is on the left holding an unidentified child. Her grandmother is next to her, and Fred Trussell is on the far right, next to the log barn. Alfred and Emma's friendship ripened into love, and Alfred asked Emma to marry him. About that same time, he received a mission call. Emma told him, "Go on your mission, and when you come home with an honorable release, I'll marry you. I'll wait." This picture was taken in 1905. It was a custom in those days for the railroads to offer special excursion fares to Salt Lake City for General Conference. Alfred went on one of these excursions in April 1904, spending his last money. The next month he found this letter from Box B in his mailbox. He accepted the call. He worked hard and saved his money until he had $160. Prior to returning to Switzerland, he took steps to become a U.S. citizen. Alfred was nearly ready to go when his nephew Rudolph was sick with appendicitis. Alfred's sister begged Alfred to take Rudolph to the hospital in Salt Lake. He spent all his money on Rudolph and so had no money to go, so he asked for a postponement. Now a depression was on, and things continued to get worse. He was having difficulty getting enough money to go, and so he became discouraged. One night he dreamed his mother came to him and told him that if he waited until he had enough money, that he would never go. She told him that he should go, even if he really didn't have enough money. He left with $160 in his pockets and no father nor mother to help him with any more. Emma and a friend took him to the depot in her father's buggy. He went first to Salt Lake City, where this missionary certificate was issued on October 8, 1905. He sailed from New York on October 26, 1905 on the ship Arabic. He sent this postcard of his ship to Emma, and it is postmarked the date of his sailing. He was sent to Germany and labored first in Gerlitz. He is on the left rear of this photo. While he was working in Gerlitz, the mission president came to visit. Alfred was having trouble with his eye, so the mission president sent him to Berlin to have it taken care of. In Berlin, he met his missionary friend Robert Tuscher, and they had this picture taken together. Alfred went to the Free Charity Hospital, where the doctor discovered a foreign object embedded in his eye. On the spot, the doctor's assistants held him down while the doctor operated, removing the splinter. After suffering excruciating pain, he quickly recovered. Emma sent this photograph of her and Hannah Beans to Alfred while he was in Gerlitz. It was taken on about February 1906. Back in Gerlitz, Alfred was completely out of money and wrote a letter of resignation to the mission president, planning to mail it in the morning. During the night, his dead mother came to him and told him to sell the little home in Montpelier. She told him to write Jacob Wanger, offering it for $250 and that Wanger would buy it. He did, and his offer was accepted by return mail. Early in August 1906, Alfred received a letter from Emma that her father had again been called to the mission in Switzerland. Friedrich Trussell had been proved again in the fiery furnace of adversity, this time to leave his motherless children and their feeble grandmother to care for themselves. Marguerite the Bergermeyer was 78 years old, feeble and ill. Gertie was a 14-year-old invalid just teaching herself to walk again. Emma was 20 and in good health. The bishop promised to help the family by providing food and fuel, but that help turned out to be 2 small portions of beans and fat salt pork. If it had not been for the generous helpings of food and coal from Fred and Eliza Agater, Emma's half-sister, the pitiful little family would have starved and frozen. This is the Fred Agater family, to whom we owe thanks. The children are May, Fritz, and Gertie Agater. A quarter century after Friedrich's marvelous mission, his grandson Leroy kept hearing stories about the little wonder man. The Swiss saints told of the miraculous healing of a man whose stomach was torn apart by shotgun pellets, and of another man who lost his hand in a hay machine after being told, "The hand that threw that rock will never throw another rock at a Mormon missionary." When Leroy asked, they told him that they were talking about Friedrich Trussell. Leroy said, "That's my grandpa." This picture of Leroy is dated October 19, 1933, in Bern.
And my father turned around and said, "The hand that throwed that rock won't throw another one a year from now." And so in about a year or so after, when he was in church one time, a man come up to him and said he wanted to apologize to him. And he said, "Well, I wouldn't know what for." He said, "Well, I'm the man that threw the rock from behind that hedge." And he said a man that threw it wouldn't throw another one a year from now. And he said, "I want to tell you that your word was fulfilled." And my father said, "Oh, my dear, what happened?" And he said, "Well, I was thrashing, and I got my hand in the thrasher, and it just took my arm off." And so my father said, "Well, he didn't mean that," but he said he was prompted to say that just as the rock came.
Alfred Blaser was transferred to Breslau as presiding elder on August 28, 1906. Alfred is on the right rear in this picture of the Breslau elders. It was from Breslau that he was banished for his missionary activity, with the threat of automatic imprisonment if he ever returned. This is the banishment letter. A sort of poetic justice occurred decades later when his son Glenn was a military governor of Breslau with the conquering Allied armies in World War II. These are the missionaries in Gotha: Charles L. Angerbauer, Wallace Allred, W. L. Lindsay, with Alfred Blaser on the right. No names on this photograph. He sent it from Dessau at the time of his transfer to Switzerland in April 1907. In Bern, these Montpelierites met for a picture. Friedrich Trussell, Alfred's future father-in-law, Eddie Grosjean, Alfred Blaser, Rudolf Sand, and Elder Newman. Alfred told Friedrich he planned to marry Emma as soon as he got home, and Friedrich invited them to live in his home during the 10 months between their releases. Here's the barren branch of the church on September 19, 1907. There's Alfred in the back row, as usual, in the center of this picture. Alfred wrote the names on this picture, but no place nor date. We recognize him as second from the left. On the back of the picture, he wrote a love poem to Emma. This is the priesthood meeting in Beale on January 4, 1908. There were only a few months left now of his mission. Again, we find him on the back row. His letter of honorable release is dated April 2, 1908, to correspond to his sailing date from England. He sailed home from Liverpool on the HMS Canada. This card is postmarked April 2, 1908. Here are the postcards that Emma carefully saved, and the letters he sent her. She numbered each one, and the last one bears the number 90, or about 3 per month for his 30 months mission. Alfred and Emma were married June 12, 1908 in the Salt Lake Temple, and returned to Montpelier to live in the Trussell home. Leroy was born in Grandpa Trussell's home on April 12, 1909. Alfred was ordained a 70 on December 13, 1908. On October 15, 1909, Friedrich Trussell married 26-year-old Rosina Hollenweger, a Swiss convert, in the Salt Lake Temple. This is their wedding picture. Alfred, Emma, and Leroy moved from the Trussell home into an abandoned log house where the rent was $3 per month. It had only 2 usable rooms, and the rest of the house had caved in. They next moved into the James Dunford house, where the rent was $6 per month. Ed was born in the Dunford house on December 14, 1910. Friedrich Trussell built this new home for his new bride. This shows the Trussells and the Blaser families in front of the Trussells' new home about 1910. Alfred had bought a lot for $50 from Brennan and Davis and had faithfully made payments of $5 per month. When the lot was nearly paid for, Brennan and Davis offered to sell him the materials to build a home on credit. This picture of the new home he built shows Edward and Leroy standing and Goldie in the baby buggy. Goldie was the first baby born in the new home. Here's Goldie in a high chair when she was about 6 months old. Alfred Blaser's reputation for quality workmanship continued to spread, and his services were in great demand. His family is proud of how cement work with this stamp in it stands the test of time. He served the German-speaking saints in the Montpelier German branch presidency for many years. We believe that this is the presidency in 1913. Alfred Blaser on the left, Jacob Hershey, and Robert Feinauer. This photograph of Leroy, Goldie, and Edward was taken about 1915. A traveling photographer took this picture of Goldie and Albert in the Blaser front room about 1917. Here are Edward, Goldie, Leroy, Glenn, and Albert in about 1920. Do you remember how immaculately clean and pressed their mother always kept them? The presidency of the German branch in 1921. Alfred Blaser, first counselor, Simon Einsinger, president, Fred Bartolome, second counselor. In the early 1920s, the Kodak Browning camera with roll film became popular, and now we're seeing pictures taken by the Blasers themselves. This is their first car, a Model T Ford, about 1922. This old torn photo from Leroy's album shows Leroy, Albert, Glenn, and Alfred Blaser sitting on the running board of their Model T. With a camera of their own, the Blasers give us a better view of their family activities. This is the Blaser home after the back room was added and the house painted, but before the front porch was added. Here's Albert with a wild rabbit he shot. Albert and Glenn in the yard of their home with Tootie. A formal portrait of the 3 brothers and a sister, Rosetta Somers, Alfred, Christian, and Ernest Blaser. taken by Reinhardt's studio in Montpelier in 1923. Now a group of photographs taken about 1924. This is Leroy hunting rabbits in the fields northeast of Montpelier. We don't think that Alfred ever hunted, but he often went with the boys when they did. This also might have been taken on the way to dig a grave at the Montpelier Cemetery. Alfred was sexton for many years, and he and Leroy or Ed would walk the 2 miles or so, hunting rabbits on the way. This shows Ed with a gun in front of the Blaser home. The Blaser children with their mother on the front lawn of their home. Left rear is Goldie, Leroy, and Albert, and front, Glenn, Emma T., Harold, and Ed. This is Ed with Bessie. All the boys helped with the milking and delivering the milk. Goldie learned to ride the boys' newspaper bike by coasting down a small hill near Frederick's place. A family gathering of Blasers and Trussels. Standing, Ernest Haltiner with baby, Ernest's wife, Goldie Blaser, and then seated are William and Frederick Trussell, Alfred Blaser holding Albert, Emma Peterite holding Fritz, Hannah Hughes holding Gladys. A trip to Crow Creek about 1925. Hughes Dodge, Kelsey's and Blaser's Fords, and McCart's Dodge, or was it a Durant? The trip to Crow Creek was a big event each year. Here's the bunch camping at Crow Creek. Let's see if we can recognize them. Standing on the left, Gertie Agater, Emma Blaser, Hannah and Bill Hughes, May Agater, Easton and Eliza Kelsey, Emma Peterite, Ed Blaser. In the front, that's Esther Crawling, and Fred Agater, Gladys Hughes, Vesta and Margaret Agater, Goldie, Harold, Albert, and Glenn Blaser, Dick Hughes, John Agater. Leroy took the picture. This picture of Emma and Alfred was taken in front of their home about 1926. All the Blaser children attended Montpelier High School. This picture was taken while Leroy was there. An automatic coin machine took your picture for a dime. Here's Leroy, and Ed, Goldie, Albert, Glenn, and Harold. Goldie and Margaret Agater. Margaret died in 1930 from a ruptured appendix. Trussels lived a quarter-mile farther out 8th Street than the Blasers did. This picture of the Trussels was taken as they went by Blasers. Even after most people had cars, the Trussels continued to drive their buggy to town several times a week. This is Albert on Pal, the Shetland pony with a mind of his own. The children would deliver milk on a sleigh pulled by Pal. Sometimes in the middle of delivering, Pal would decide he had worked enough for one day and head for home, and nobody could stop him. The Blaser children were always busy with money-making projects such as selling papers and magazines in cloverine salve. They cleaned yards, helped in the Montpelier Examiner print shop, painted store signs. This is a tire cover that Ed designed and painted to advertise the Bear Lake County Fair. Alfred Blaser was put in as counselor in the 2nd Ward Bishop and served about 10 years, from about 1929 until the family moved to Logan in 1939. This is the Montpelier 2nd Ward Chapel about 1930. The 1930s and the Great Depression were busy times for the Blasers. Leroy and Albert went on missions. Ed, Goldie, and Leroy married. Leroy, Ed, Goldie, Albert, and Glenn went to the university, and the family moved to Logan. The Reinhardt studio in Montpelier took this family portrait in 1936. Harold, Albert, Leroy, Glenn, Edward, Alfred and Emma T. Blaser, and Goldie Blaser-Mon. This is Goldie in her Chicago mail-order coat. She paid $9.90 plus postage, but everyone thought she had paid much more for it. This is Ed's first deer. He shot it in Bloomington Canyon. Grandpa Trussell was a butcher, so he came over to help Ed cut and skin it. Here's a load of logs that Ed cut and hauled by himself on the Model T Ford and trailer. He hauled 6 or 8 loads like this for 1 year's firewood. Here's Ed with the family cement mixer. Remember how that one-lung motor went put, 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 put? Goldie came from Richfield for a visit in 1936 and had this picture taken with her mother. Here's Emma T. Blaser in with the Logan Canyon Reservoir in the background. A four-generation picture with the Blasers' first grandchild. Friedrich Trussell, Emma Trussell Blaser, Goldie Blaser Mon holding Rayona May Mon. Remember that old cupboard in the kitchen in Montpelier where so many food chores were done? I took this series of pictures when we came from Chalice for Thanksgiving in 1938. This picture shows Ed and Bernie arriving in their Model A Ford and Goldie outside to meet them. Here's Grandma baking the turkey. Remember what a marvelous cook she was? And here she is cutting the turkey. No matter how busy she was, Grandma always had time to give a thirsty granddaughter a drink. Thanksgiving dinner 1938. Starting at the left and going around the table, we have Rosetta Somers, Glenn, Edward, Harold, Goldie, and Rayona Mon, Bernice, Emma T., Leroy, and Alfred Blaser. Goldie plays for everyone to sing. This piano was one of the first pieces of furniture that Emma and Alfred bought for their new home, about 1913. Bernice, Ed, Leroy, Glenn, Roy and Goldie, Alfred, Rayona, Emma. Thanksgiving comes to a close while Grandma knits and Grandpa tells Rayona a story. When Albert came home from Switzerland, he brought Roy Mon a Contax camera. This is the first color picture Roy ever took. Roy Mon, Emma and Leroy Blaser, Goldie B. Mon, Alfred, Bernice Blaser, Valeria Day, Ed, Albert, and Glenn Blaser. June 10, 1939. The Blaser home's first color portrait. June 10, 1939. Rayona helps Grandpa bring in the milk. Remember the move to Logan on July 3, 1939? That's when the family changed the pronunciation of their name from Blaser to Blaser. This clipping is from the Montpelier Examiner. There was a lot of goodbye visiting. Rayona, Grandma, Goldie, May and Ern Barchi, and Bernice in the Blaser kitchen. Bishop Mumford came for a farewell chat in the kitchen. Goldie does her mother's hair. Grandma visiting Agaters. Grandma on the sidewalk and Mary Agater on the steps. Fred Agater is standing on the lawn in front of the porch. May and Ernest Barchi are on the porch. We don't know who that girl is between them. Alfred Blaser giving his farewell talk to the Montpelier Second Ward members. Suddenly, moving day was here. Early on July 3, 1939, the moving van backed across the lawn and up to the front door to load their possessions for the trip to Logan. There was a heap of living in the 27 years they called this house their home. The next day, July 4, 1939, they were in their new larger home and the flag was flying. This move to Logan was good for the family, but it also brought some hardships. They enjoyed Logan's milder climate with its longer growing season and better construction weather. It was also a more central location for their spreading family. The first year in Logan, they took in college students for board and room. Grandma was probably the best cook at any boarding house in Logan, and the students reciprocated by eating more, leaving them little or no profit for their effort. This is the Utah State Homecoming Day Parade on Armistice Day, November 11, 1939. Hitler's invasion of Poland 2 months earlier had made everyone aware of the likelihood of another world war. Here's Harold marching in the ROTC. It's Albert with Rayona Mon watching the parade. Glenn was called to the Tahiti mission, but the French government would not let him enter because of his Swiss name. So his call was changed to Brazil, where he served among the German-speaking Brazilians. Christmas 1940. Goldie on the floor next to the Christmas tree and Grandma wrapping a present. Grandpa's on the right. They still had not adapted to the noisy location of their Logan home. Their bedroom was next to 4th North, and cars roaring up and down the highway all night made sleep difficult. Grandpa loved to play records for the children on the hand-cranked phonograph. Here he's holding Arlene Mon, and Rayona is seated on the kitchen table and Goldie on the right. Christmas 1940. Grandpa did cement contracting and in addition helped with the boarding house for 3 years. Then he took a job as custodian at the college in September 1942. At the end of Glenn's mission, he could not leave Brazil because of the naval blockade, so he labored there 6 months more until evacuated by the U.S. Navy. He flew out on the Martin Mars, an 85-passenger, 8-engine flying boat, the largest in the world. He arrived home November 7, 1942, entered ROTC November 14. December 23rd, he and Ruth Carlson were married in the Logan Temple. Here's the wedding party in front of Carlson's place. Glenn attended Utah State Agricultural College until the next summer when he entered active Army duty. 4 sons in the military service in the United States meant many anxious hours for Emma and Alfred Blaser, and their constant prayers went with every one. This shows Ed as Lieutenant J.G. in the Navy Bureau of Research and Invention in Washington, D.C. Ed and Bernice in Pasco, Washington in 1943. Ed served 4 years during World War II and 16 years in the Naval Reserve, then retired as a lieutenant commander. Here's Albert visiting his dad in Logan while on leave from the Air Force. Albert in Rock Creek Park near Washington, D.C., holding Leon, March 5, 1944. Albert flew photo reconnaissance missions over Germany from North Africa and Italy. Glenn was an intelligence officer with the 15th Army in Germany. This shows him in Germany. Harold was with the Army Corps of Engineers. This shows him with Leroy when they met at Fort Belvoir, Virginia, about September 1944. Grandpa took a job as custodian at the Woodruff School when he was 63 years old. His college student helpers were always complaining that they couldn't keep up with him as he ran up and down the school stairs. After 10 years of service, he retired on July 1, 1952. They gave him the choice of a $500 lump sum or $50 per month for life. He was 73, so he took the $500, saying he would never live long enough to collect it all in monthly installments. He lived 15 years longer. About the time Grandpa retired, they sold their big home on 4th North and bought this sweet little home around the corner at 385 North, 4th East. It shows Grandpa's tender, loving care. Glenn moved to Boise on October 16, 1954. This is a clipping from a Boise paper. Grandma and Grandpa always loved parties with their family, and the biggest party of them all was their golden wedding anniversary party on June 10, 1958. We used to smile at how Grandma would always tell Grandpa exactly how much each item would cost as she handed him the money to shop for her at the corner store. We wondered for a long time how he was able to buy this beautiful diamond without her knowing it. Someone met him at the temple and paid an old bill. Instead of telling her, he bought this diamond ring for their 50th wedding anniversary. A family dinner at Leroy's home in Logan about 1958. Around the table clockwise. Emma T. Blaser, Mary Carlson, Roy Mon, Albert and Steve Blaser, Glenn Mon, Rachel Blaser, Goldie Mon, Glenn, Alfred Blaser holding Lorna Lee. Here's a four-generation photo representing one of the dozens taken. It shows Michael Stokes sitting on his great-grandma Blaser's lap about June 1960. In July 1961, we had a family reunion at Bear Lake, with 19 of us together at the same place and time. A typical scene. Grandma hard at work in the kitchen while the water skiing was going on out on the lake. Emma T. Blaser on the left, Ann Blaser coming in the door, Goldie Beam on, and Bernice Blaser. A picnic in Logan Canyon, July 4, 1962. Grandpa loved his great-grandchildren. Here he is with Michael Stokes, their first great-grandchild, at Bear Lake on July 4, 1963. Grandma always loved picnics. This is at Bear Lake, about 1965. Grandpa was a faithful temple worker. While they lived in Logan, he was proxy for endowments of more than 2,500 souls, as well as thousands of baptisms and sealing. Grandpa was operated on for a hernia in July 1967 in the D Memorial Hospital in Ogden. He recovered well and came home to Goldie's home. But as he recovered, he developed a ruptured appendix. He returned to the hospital where he died July 14, 1967 at the age of 88. This photograph was taken at the Logan City Cemetery. In front of Leroy's home in Logan following the funeral, Harold, Glenn, Goldie, Ed, and Albert. Grandma lived 6 years longer, enjoying the company of her family, worrying about every one of them and praying for them constantly. Her loving family included her in their parties, their travels, and their picnics. When Grandma went to the hospital with cancer, she left her sweet little home immaculate inside and out. The cheerful flowers reflected her cheerful disposition. Not a thing was out of place in her home. Her best china was perfectly arranged in her kitchen cupboard. The golden 50 from their golden wedding cake had its place here for 15 years. Grandma's mortal mission came to an end on September 17, 1973 at the McKay D Hospital in Ogden, and her earthly remains lie beside Grandpa's in the Logan City Cemetery, awaiting the great resurrection day. Well done, Mom and Dad, Grandma and Grandpa. May we all be as successful as you have been in the things that really count. Auf Wiedersehen. Until we meet again.